Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Have you ever noticed that the moment you start taking care of yourself, truly caring for your heart, your mind, and your soul, something subtle shifts in the people around you? It might be a glance, a pause in a conversation, or a sudden change in how someone reacts to your words or choices. At first, it feels confusing. You think, did I do something wrong? Did I offend them? But then, slowly you begin to notice a pattern as you step into more self-awareness, more emotional strength, more courage to live authentically. Some people seem uncomfortable. And sometimes, just sometimes, that discomfort isn't random. It's a quiet, unspoken form of envy. It's not that they wish harm on you, not always. It's deeper and more complicated. They see the changes in you, the confidence in your voice, the calmness in your decisions, the strength in your boundaries, and it stirs something inside them. Perhaps they've wanted to make similar changes but felt stuck, or perhaps they haven't yet realized the value of their own healing journey. Your progress, your healing, becomes a mirror they can't quite face. And that, my friend, can feel heavy to witness. Think about it. Maybe it was your friend who used to call you every week to vent about life. But now, as you gently step back and take care of your own mental and emotional energy, they grow quiet. Or perhaps it's a sibling who used to expect you to participate in every family drama, who now frowns or questions your choices when you politely say no. Maybe it's a colleague who subtly criticizes your assertiveness or independence, masking it as casual conversation, but you can feel the tension beneath their words. These little moments are confusing because they mix admiration with discomfort, support with subtle envy, and love with hidden judgment. It's natural to feel a pang of hurt in these situations. You've worked hard to heal, to grow, to shed old patterns that kept you small or anxious. And yet, when someone close to you reacts with envy or subtle judgment, it can feel like a betrayal. You might find yourself questioning your own choices. Am I being too bold? Am I sharing too much? Should I shrink back to make them comfortable? These questions are exhausting because, in truth, you're not doing anything wrong. You're simply stepping into the life that was always meant for you. The life where your emotional well-being is prioritized, where your boundaries are honored, where your growth is celebrated. Here's the important thing to remember: healing and transformation are visible. They ripple out in the way you speak, the way you move, the way you respond to stress, and the way you carry yourself in relationships. People who are still entangled in their own struggles or fear change may unconsciously react to that light with discomfort or subtle resistance. And sometimes, that resistance wears the mask of jealousy. But recognizing this is the first step toward protecting your peace. It's a gentle reminder that someone else's discomfort doesn't diminish your progress or your worth. Let me share a story that might feel familiar. I knew a woman, let's call her Sarah, who had spent years putting everyone else first. She was the caregiver, the peacekeeper, the one who always said yes, even when her own heart felt tired. For decades, she ignored her own needs, believing that her value came from her ability to serve, to fix, to manage everyone else's emotions. Then one day, something shifted. She started therapy, journaling, and meditation. She began to honor her feelings and speak up when something didn't feel right. She learned to say no without guilt, to pause before agreeing to obligations that drained her, and to prioritize her own joy. At first, her circle of friends and family celebrated. "You look so happy," they said. "I'm proud of you," they added. But gradually, subtle changes emerged. One friend who used to share every life update with her stopped reaching out as often. A sibling seemed irritated when Sarah politely declined a request to mediate a family issue. Even a colleague began questioning her work decisions, hinting that she was becoming too assertive. Sarah felt hurt, confused, and even guilty. She asked herself, "Am I doing something wrong by finally putting myself first?" But then, with time and reflection, she realized something vital: these reactions weren't about her. They were about the other person's relationship with change, growth, and self-worth. Sarah's healing journey acted as a mirror, reflecting not only her own progress, but also the places where others hadn't yet faced their own challenges. Once she understood this, the sting of envy and subtle judgment softened. She could respond with compassion, not defensiveness, knowing that she had every right to prioritize her healing and well-being. You might be nodding along because you've experienced something similar. You've worked to become more emotionally aware, more resilient, more in tune with your own heart. And suddenly the people around you shift in ways that are confusing or even painful. You may notice a friend who once supported you seems distant, or a relative who quietly criticizes your choices. Perhaps someone close comments on your growth with a hint of sarcasm or skepticism, and you can feel the underlying envy without ever needing to hear it spelled out. Here's a question to reflect on. When someone reacts with subtle envy toward your progress, what story do you tell yourself about it? Do you assume it's about you, or could it be about them? This is where self-awareness becomes powerful. By pausing, noticing your feelings, and separating your journey from their reaction, you reclaim your power. You protect your peace without needing to explain yourself, justify your choices, or dim your light. And yes, it can feel lonely at times. Choosing healing over approval often means stepping away from people who once felt close. But this solitude is not a punishment. It's a necessary space for growth. In this quiet, you nurture your inner strength, rediscover your passions, and cultivate joy that isn't contingent on anyone else's recognition or envy. So, take a moment to honor yourself right now. You've faced your struggles, you've taken courageous steps toward healing, and you've begun prioritizing your well-being. The discomfort or envy you notice in others is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of the powerful, beautiful transformation that's taking place in you, and that is something to celebrate. Imagine if you could carry this understanding with you every time you sense someone's subtle jealousy. Imagine feeling calm instead of defensive, compassionate instead of resentful, and confident instead of guilty. You can step into your healing journey fully, knowing that the discomfort of others doesn't diminish your light. It simply means you're moving forward, and moving forward is exactly what you deserve. Take a deep breath and allow yourself to feel this. The very act of healing, of choosing yourself, of honoring your heart, is a courageous rebellion against the old patterns of people-pleasing and self-neglect. Every step you take in this journey is a declaration of your worth, your strength, and your resilience. And every subtle sign of jealousy you encounter is a quiet confirmation you are evolving, you are visible, and you are doing something truly brave. So, as you continue this journey, notice the patterns, honor your feelings, and give yourself permission to protect your peace. Ask yourself which relationships lift me up, and which ones quietly drain my energy, which interactions make me feel safe to grow, and which leave me questioning my own worth. By paying attention to these subtle cues, you'll cultivate a space where your healing can flourish, where your light can shine brightly, and where you can continue stepping boldly into the life you are meant to live, without apology, without fear, and without guilt. Because here's the truth, your healing journey is yours. It is sacred. And anyone who reacts with envy is simply revealing their own unmet needs, their own fears, and their own unhealed spaces. That is not your burden to carry. Your responsibility is to yourself, to nurture your growth, protect your peace, and honor the brave work you're doing every single day. And in doing so, you send a powerful message to the world that no matter the jealousy, the subtle criticism, or the discomfort in others, you will not stop healing, you will not shrink back, and you will continue to rise beautifully, courageously, unapologetically. The hardest part about healing is not just the work you do within yourself. It's often how the world around you responds to it. You'd think that people would cheer you on, encourage your courage, and celebrate the way you're reclaiming your life. And sometimes they do. But more often than we expect, healing exposes a painful truth. Not everyone will understand, and not everyone will be happy about it. In fact, sometimes the very people you thought would support you the most can be the ones who feel unsettled, distant, or even threatened by your growth. Why does this happen? Because healing changes the rules. For years, maybe decades, you might have played a certain role in other people's lives. Perhaps you were the one who always said yes, the one who carried the weight of family drama, the one who listened endlessly to other people's struggles while neglecting your own. Maybe you were the peacemaker, the fixer, the dependable one who showed up no matter how tired you were. People get used to that version of you. the version that prioritizes them, that bends to accommodate their needs, that sacrifices her own peace for the sake of keeping things smooth. But when you start healing, that version of you begins to dissolve. You start noticing where you've been silencing yourself. You begin to set boundaries. You say no when your heart can't carry another burden. You stop engaging in conversations that drain you, and you choose peace over pleasing. To you, these changes are liberating. They are evidence that you are finally honoring your worth, reclaiming your energy, and walking toward freedom. But to others, especially those who benefited from your old patterns, it feels like a loss. It feels like rejection. And when people feel rejected or left behind, they don't always express it with honesty. Sometimes it shows up as criticism, withdrawal, or subtle envy. The problem is, we're not taught to expect this. When you step into healing, no one warns you about the silent resistance you may encounter. No one prepares you for the strange looks when you decline an invitation that doesn't serve your well-being. No one tells you that the people who once leaned on you might interpret your growth as selfishness. And because we don't expect it, the reactions of others can feel like a deep wound. You might think, if healing makes me lose people, maybe I'm doing something wrong. That thought alone is enough to make you doubt yourself, to question your progress, and sometimes even to retreat back into old patterns just to keep the peace. But here's the truth. Their discomfort is not a reflection of your failure. It's proof of your growth. Healing stirs emotions, not only in you but in the people around you. It challenges unspoken agreements and long-standing dynamics. If you've always been the person who sacrificed herself to keep relationships comfortable, then your choice to stop doing that will feel disruptive. For them, it changes the script. For you, it's freedom. That clash is where the tension begins. Let's be honest, it's painful. It hurts when someone you love grows distant the moment you start honoring your needs. It stings when subtle comments are made that downplay your progress. It's confusing when people question your motives or call your choices selfish, when you know deep down they are necessary for your survival and growth. This misunderstanding is one of the most common, yet most unspoken, struggles of healing. It's not just about doing the work on yourself. It's about carrying the weight of being misunderstood by those you hoped would stand with you. Think about a woman who has finally found her voice after years of silence in her marriage or her family. She begins to speak up, to say what she truly feels, to no longer hide behind the mask of, "I'm fine." Suddenly, the people around her look unsettled. Some may say, "You've changed," with a tone that feels more like accusation than admiration. Others may withdraw, leaving her to feel isolated just when she most needs connection. And deep inside, she wonders, is it safer to go back to who I was before? This is the very heart of the problem. Healing often requires you to stand tall in your truth while others question it, to remain steady while others wrestle with discomfort, to keep choosing yourself even when it feels lonely. This loneliness, this gap between who you were and who you are becoming, is one of the most misunderstood parts of healing. We expect healing to feel light, peaceful, and celebrated, and while it can eventually bring those things, the journey often begins with friction. Not because you're wrong, but because change itself is uncomfortable for everyone. You're breaking patterns that might have existed for decades. You're no longer the same version of yourself that others relied on, and that shift ripples through every relationship you have. And here's something we rarely admit out loud. Sometimes the resistance from others makes us angry. We think, why can't they just be happy for me? Why can't they see how hard I've worked? That anger is natural because underneath it is pain. It's the grief of realizing not everyone will walk with you into your new chapter. It's the sadness of recognizing that some relationships may not survive your healing. It's the heartbreak of knowing that your joy can sometimes awaken someone else's envy. But let me pause and say this: your feelings in this are valid. If you feel hurt, lonely, misunderstood, or even guilty, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. Of course you long for encouragement. Of course you want your growth to be celebrated. Of course it hurts when it isn't. To deny that hurt would be to deny your humanity. The goal is not to pretend it doesn't matter. It's to remember why it's happening and to hold compassion for yourself in the midst of it. Healing is not linear, and it's not just personal, it's relational. Every step you take toward your wholeness shifts the ground beneath your relationships. That's why so many women, especially in midlife, feel this paradox: the more they heal, the more isolated they sometimes feel. Because healing forces you to confront not only your own wounds, but also the unspoken agreements you've lived under with others. Some people will adapt and grow alongside you. Others may resist. And the problem, the one we don't talk about enough, is how deeply painful and confusing that resistance can be. You are not alone in this. Thousands of women in your season of life are walking this exact path. They're waking up to their worth, reclaiming their time, their voice, their energy. And just like you, they are noticing who celebrates with them and who quietly pulls away. The shared struggle is real, and acknowledging it is powerful because it reminds you that you are not imagining things. This is part of the journey. So when you feel the sting of envy from someone close, when you hear the criticism wrapped in casual conversation, when you sense the distance in a relationship that once felt safe, remember this: it's not because you're failing. It's because you're growing. And growth, by its very nature, disrupts the comfort of the old. Here's where things get interesting. The very signs of jealousy or discomfort you notice in others, those awkward silences, sarcastic comments, or subtle criticisms, are not necessarily signs that something is wrong with you. They're often signs that something is profoundly right. When you begin to heal, you become living proof that change is possible. And for someone who isn't ready to face their own pain, your progress can feel like a mirror reflecting back everything they've been avoiding. That reflection can be uncomfortable, even painful. Instead of saying, "Wow, I see what she's doing, and maybe I can try too," some people slip into denial, deflection, or even envy. It may sound counterintuitive, but other people's jealousy is sometimes the clearest evidence that you are truly growing. Think about it. If you were still playing small, ignoring your needs, people-pleasing until you were exhausted, no one would feel threatened. They'd still be benefiting from your silence, your compliance, your endless availability. But the moment you reclaim your voice, your boundaries, and your sense of worth, the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, they can't take you for granted. They can't assume you'll sacrifice yourself. They can't count on you to be the one who carries their load while neglecting your own. And that change, that's what sparks discomfort. It's almost like turning on a light in a dark room. If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night and flicked on the lamp, you know how jarring it can feel. The light itself isn't harmful, but it forces your eyes to adjust. Growth is like that. Your healing journey turns on a light, and while you may be celebrating the clarity, others may be blinking uncomfortably, wishing things could go back to the shadows where they didn't have to see so clearly. Let me share a story that captures this dynamic. A woman I once spoke with had spent most of her life in a marriage where she dimmed herself. She rarely shared her true opinions, kept her dreams hidden, and prioritized her partner's comfort over her own needs. After years of quiet suffering, she began therapy. Slowly, she started reconnecting with who she really was: her creativity, her sense of humor, her voice. She began to laugh again, to speak up, to suggest changes that would make her life healthier. And while her personal growth was beautiful, it also created tension. Her husband, who had become used to her silence, didn't know how to handle this new version of her. He made sarcastic remarks, questioned her choices, and sometimes even accused her of thinking she was better than him. She felt confused and guilty at first, wondering if she was somehow abandoning him by embracing her own life. But over time, she realized his jealousy wasn't really about her. It was about him, his fear of change, his discomfort with growth, his own unhealed wounds. This is the deeper truth. Jealousy is rarely about the person being envied. It's about the person who feels it. Your healing is simply the trigger. It exposes the gap between where they are and where they wish they could be. It shines a light on the courage they haven't yet mustered. And rather than face that truth, it's easier to criticize you, to distance themselves, or to dismiss your progress. Understanding this can be liberating, because it allows you to stop internalizing their reactions as evidence that you're doing something wrong. There's also something important to understand here about timing. Not everyone is ready to heal at the same moment. For some people, watching you set boundaries or choose joy feels like watching someone speak a language they don't understand. It reminds them of the work they haven't done, the courage they haven't claimed, and the truth they're not ready to face. And instead of being inspired, their first reaction may be envy. That doesn't mean they'll stay there forever. Sometimes, people who are jealous of your healing eventually take inspiration from it. But in the moment, their reaction can feel like rejection. Recognizing the difference can protect your heart. It's worth asking yourself this question: what if someone else's jealousy is not an obstacle to your growth, but a confirmation of it? What if every snide remark or dismissive comment is actually a backhanded acknowledgement that your courage is visible, undeniable, and real? Imagine how much lighter your heart would feel if you saw envy not as a personal attack, but as a sign that you're breaking cycles and shifting patterns that others haven't yet dared to face. There's also a paradox here. The more authentic you become, the more some people may pull away, but the ones who remain, or the ones who enter your life later, are the ones who truly see you. In a way, jealousy serves as a filter. It shows you who can celebrate you without competition, who can stand beside you without feeling threatened, who can love you without needing to keep you small. That realization can be painful at first, but it also brings clarity. Think back to your own life. Maybe there was a time when you saw someone else's growth and felt a pang of envy. Perhaps a friend found the courage to leave a toxic relationship, and while you were happy for her, you also felt a twinge of sadness or frustration that you weren't ready to do the same. That doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you human. Envy is often just unacknowledged longing. It's the soul whispering, "I want that too." If you can extend compassion to yourself in those moments, you can also extend compassion to others who feel jealous of you now. Their envy is simply their longing, unspoken, hidden behind criticism or withdrawal. What makes this insight powerful is the way it shifts your response. Instead of shrinking yourself to avoid triggering others, you can stand firm in your light, knowing that their reaction is part of their own journey. You don't need to apologize for growing. You don't need to justify your healing. You certainly don't need to go back to the smaller, quieter version of yourself just to make others comfortable. You can hold space for their discomfort without carrying it as your own burden. And perhaps most importantly, you can remind yourself that envy is not the final word. Some people who resist your growth today may one day thank you for showing them what's possible. Your courage might plant seeds in their hearts that take years to bloom. You may never see the fruit of it, but your healing has the power to ripple outward in ways you can't measure. So the next time you sense jealousy lingering in the air, pause and reframe it. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What does this say about their own journey?" Instead of shrinking, breathe deeply and remind yourself, their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to continue healing, to continue shining, to continue walking the path that is bringing you peace, joy, and wholeness. And here's the most freeing part of all. When you understand that jealousy is often just unspoken longing, you can choose compassion without sacrificing your boundaries. You can see someone's envy for what it is, a reflection of their own unmet needs, without letting it derail your growth. You can hold your head high, stay true to your journey, and trust that the right people, the ones who aren't threatened by your healing, will always find their way to your side. So the question becomes, how do you keep walking your healing path when jealousy shows up in the people around you? How do you protect your peace without shutting yourself off from love? How do you stay soft enough to remain open, yet strong enough not to let envy and criticism pull you back into old patterns of self-doubt? The answer lies in small, steady choices. Choices that honor your growth without demanding perfection. Choices that allow you to keep moving forward, even when the world around you resists your change. The first thing to remember is that you are not responsible for fixing how others feel about your healing. You can offer kindness, you can show compassion, you can choose not to respond with bitterness, but you cannot do the work for them. If someone is jealous of your growth, it is because they have not yet chosen their own. That doesn't make them bad or unworthy. It simply means they're on a different timeline. Releasing the pressure to manage their emotions is the beginning of freedom. When you stop trying to carry what isn't yours, you create space to tend to what is. Of course, saying this is easier than living it. Many of us were raised to be caretakers of everyone else's comfort. Maybe you were the one who kept the peace at family gatherings, smoothing over tension with a smile. Maybe you were the dependable friend who answered late night phone calls, even when you were exhausted. Or maybe you were the one who stayed quiet in order not to rock the boat. For years, your nervous system was trained to measure your worth by how much ease you created for others. So when someone is jealous of your healing and you choose not to bend yourself to make them feel better, it feels almost unnatural. It feels like you're breaking a rule you didn't even know existed. But here's the truth. That rule was never meant to keep you safe. It was meant to keep you small. And you don't live by those rules anymore. Practical solutions start small. Sometimes it's as simple as pausing before you react. When someone makes a cutting remark about your choices, your instinct might be to explain, to defend, to make them see your side. But often, silence is more powerful. A gentle smile, a change of subject, or even walking away preserves your energy. You don't need to win them over to keep healing. Your peace is not a debate to be won, it is a boundary to be honored. Other times, the solution looks like protecting your milestones. Not every joy needs to be shared with everyone. Imagine you've just completed a month of journaling, and it's given you clarity and peace. Do you need to tell the friend who rolls her eyes at self? Help stuff? Probably not. Share your wins with those who celebrate you, not those who diminish you. Keeping some sacred parts of your healing private doesn't make them less real. It makes them more protected. And then there are the moments when compassion becomes the strongest tool you have. Because jealousy, at its core, is longing dressed up in armor. When someone envies your healing, what they are really saying is, I wish I could do that. I wish I had the courage. I wish I had the freedom. And while it's not your job to fix that longing, seeing it for what it is allows you to respond without absorbing it. Instead of hardening your heart, you can let theirs soften someday in their own time. Another piece of the solution is surrounding yourself with the right kind of support. Healing in isolation is possible, but it is so much harder. We need safe people, friends, communities, even mentors, who celebrate our growth without resentment. You deserve people who clap when you succeed, who comfort you when you stumble, who don't feel threatened by your light. Sometimes those people come from unexpected places. Maybe they're not lifelong friends or family members, but new connections who arrive right when you need them most. Trust that you will find them, and that they will find you when you create space for authentic relationships by releasing the ones built on old, limiting patterns. And yet, even with boundaries, privacy, compassion, and support, there will still be moments when jealousy stings. You will still feel the ache when someone you love reacts with criticism instead of celebration. You will still wonder, in quiet moments, whether it would be easier to slip back into your old self just to avoid conflict. In those moments, the most important solution is self-compassion. Instead of judging yourself for feeling hurt, remind yourself, of course this hurts. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be supported. And then gently add, but I can still choose me. I can still choose my healing. This simple acknowledgement is powerful because it honors your humanity without abandoning your growth. Think of it like tending a garden. Healing is like planting new seeds in soil that once lay neglected. As the sprouts push through, they need water, sunlight, and space, but weeds will also appear. Envy, criticism, misunderstanding, those are the weeds. The solution isn't to stop planting. It isn't to tear up the garden. The solution is to keep nurturing what is growing, while pulling out the weeds when necessary and sometimes just letting them wither on their own. The garden is yours. You get to decide what flourishes. There's a deep courage in choosing to keep growing even when others don't understand. It requires a kind of faith. Faith that the discomfort will pass. Faith that the right people will come alongside you. Faith that your healing is worth the friction. And it requires a willingness to accept that not everyone will applaud. But when you choose yourself anyway, you are breaking generations of silence, self-neglect, and cycles that have kept women small. You are saying, my healing matters. And that declaration is a solution in itself. Imagine what your life could look like if you practice these solutions daily. You wake up and no longer feel the need to justify your peace. You spend time with people who make you feel alive rather than drained. You hear a jealous remark, and instead of spiraling, you take a breath and remind yourself it's not about you. You celebrate your milestones quietly or loudly, depending on what feels safe, and you no longer apologize for your joy. That's what these small choices add up to, a life where your healing is steady, unshaken, and deeply protected. And remember, solutions don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You don't have to master boundaries overnight. You don't have to know exactly when to speak and when to stay silent every single time. Healing is not about flawless execution. It's about intention. It's about choosing over and over to prioritize your well-being. Some days you'll stumble. Some days you'll fall back into old habits. But even in those moments, you are still further along than you were before. The act of noticing is progress. The act of trying again is healing. So when jealousy shows up, and it will, see it as part of the landscape of growth. Let it remind you that you are on a path not everyone is brave enough to walk. Let it push you closer to those who support you wholeheartedly. Let it teach you to hold compassion without losing yourself. And most importantly, let it fuel your commitment to continue. Because the greatest solution of all is simply this: to keep going. To keep showing up for your healing, no matter who understands and no matter who doesn't. To keep walking forward, not because it's easy, but because you are worthy of the peace, joy, and freedom that healing brings. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the weight you carried for years no longer defines you. The scars that once felt like open wounds have begun to heal, and instead of being consumed by survival, you are now learning what it means to truly live. That is the essence of transformation, not perfection, not a flawless version of yourself, but a softer, truer, braver version who knows how to honor her own story. And that, my friend, is powerful beyond measure. Because the truth is, when you stop living in the shadow of pain and start stepping into the light of healing, everything around you shifts. Your relationships, your choices, your peace of mind, all of it begins to reflect the inner work you've been doing. The beauty of this kind of transformation is that it is not loud or flashy. It doesn't demand validation or applause. Healing is subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. It's the quiet moment when you realize you no longer replay that painful conversation over and over in your head. It's the strength you feel when you say no without apologizing. It's the way your laughter sounds more genuine, the way you take deeper breaths, the way your shoulders relax when you walk into a room. These may seem like small victories, but they are monumental shifts. And together, they create a life you no longer feel the need to escape from. But perhaps the most transformative part of healing is the way it teaches you to see yourself differently. For years, many women, especially in the second half of life, have carried narratives that tell them they're not enough. Not enough as mothers, not enough as partners, not enough in their careers, not enough in their bodies. And healing interrupts that narrative. It tells you that you were never broken in the first place, only human. It whispers that you are worthy, not because of what you produce or how well you perform for others, but simply because you exist. Imagine what it feels like to finally believe that, to walk through the world knowing that your worth is not up for debate. When you embrace this new way of living, your energy changes. You no longer chase validation from people who withhold it. You no longer shrink yourself to fit into places where you don't belong. Instead, you choose peace over chaos, presence over distraction, self-respect over people-pleasing. And the more you choose these things, the freer you become. Freedom, in this sense, is not about running away. It's about standing tall where you are, unashamed of your scars and unapologetic about your needs. This transformation also redefines what strength looks like. For so long, many of us have believed that being strong meant holding everything together, never asking for help, never admitting our pain. But healing flips that script. True strength is not pretending you're unshaken. True strength is saying, I've been through the fire, and I'm still here. It's crying when you need to cry, resting when you need to rest, and daring to love again even when your heart has been broken. That is not weakness, it is radical courage. Of course, this kind of transformation doesn't come overnight. It comes from daily, intentional choices. It comes from catching yourself when you start falling back into old patterns of self-doubt or self-sacrifice. It comes from pausing before reacting, from learning to sit with discomfort, from remembering that your healing is not linear. There will be days when you feel like you've moved backward, when old wounds resurface and you wonder if you've really grown at all. But those moments don't erase your progress. They remind you that healing is a lifelong journey, not a destination. The gift of transformation is that it not only changes how you relate to yourself, but also how you show up for others. When you learn to love yourself without conditions, you begin to love others more authentically. When you stop abandoning yourself to keep the peace, you stop enabling toxic dynamics. You start surrounding yourself with people who honor your growth instead of resenting it. You start creating relationships built on honesty, mutual respect, and compassion. And because of this, your circle may get smaller, but it will also get healthier. So what does life look like after you embrace your healing fully? Picture yourself waking up in the morning without the heavy dread that used to greet you. Picture yourself making decisions without the constant fear of disappointing someone. Picture yourself looking in the mirror and actually liking the woman who stares back. That's the life you are stepping into, a life of alignment, a life where peace is your default state, a life where you finally feel like you belong to yourself. And here's the thing, you don't need to earn this transformation. You don't need to prove that you've suffered enough to deserve it. Healing is your birthright. Joy is your birthright. Peace is your birthright. Somewhere along the way, the world may have convinced you otherwise, but deep down, you've always known the truth. You were made for more than survival. You were made to thrive, to love deeply, to create boldly, to live fully. Now, as you continue your healing journey, I want to remind you of one last truth: transformation is contagious. When you do the work of healing yourself, you create ripples that touch everyone around you. Your children see it. Your friends notice it. Even strangers can feel the difference. And in a world that desperately needs hope, your healing becomes a kind of light, a light that gives others permission to begin their own journey. So keep going. Even when it feels messy, even when it feels lonely, even when others don't understand, keep showing up for yourself. Keep choosing peace, choosing boundaries, choosing joy. The road may not be easy, but the life that's waiting on the other side is worth every step. And if this message resonated with you, I want to invite you to share your reflections in the comments. Tell me one area of your life where you've noticed the quiet victories of healing. Subscribe if you want to continue walking this journey together, and share this with someone who might need the reminder that transformation is possible. You don't have to do this alone. We're in it together. Because here's the truth: healing is not just about what you leave behind, it's about what you step into. And what you're stepping into is nothing short of beautiful.